So are St. Croix hair sheep really more valuable than Dorpers now? You know, for a long time, for commercial operations, Dorpers were considered to be more valuable than St. Croix. St. Croix didn't seem to have a lot of commercial value. But has something happened to the market that's made St. Croix much more valuable or even more valuable than Dorpers? Now, if you go out to livestockmarket.com and look, this web page application is really meant for people in the commercial sheep industry. It's not like Craigslist or LSN. It's for people that buy a lot of sheep. So it's not for the small backyard producer of sheep. And so if you'll click on the sheep icon, it'll bring up a list of all the sheep they have for sale. And they have all the different kinds of breeds here for sale, but we want to just look at the Dorpers and the St. Croix. So if you click on this breeds tab over on the left, it'll bring up this pop-up box, and we're going to check just the St. Croix sheep box and apply the filter. This gives us 8 different sellers of St. Croix sheep. And if you look at the prices, you can see that the prices are ranging between $250 up to $400 a head. If we average out the prices, we find that the average price that's being asked is $312.50. So now if we go back and we select just the Dorper sheep to show up, we find that there's 8 entries. And for these 8 entries, we look at the price range on them as well. And we notice that the price ranges anywhere from $150 to $300 a head. If we add up these 8 entries and divide by 8, we find that the average price being asked for Dorper sheep is $209.38. So the average price being asked for Dorpers, and I guess Katahdin mixes as well, is less than $100 less than what's being asked for St. Croix. So what's going on with the price of the Dorper being less than St. Croix? Well, if we take a look at just one of these advertisements, maybe we can read between the lines and find out. This ad is for 500 Dorper and Katahdin, I guess, crossed ewes. And we're going to look down here at this bottom at this description and see what it says about them. The seller is telling us that these ewes are 1 year old by age. They're current on their wormers and their vaccinations. And they've been fortunate with a lot of rain, but they've been attending to a handful of cases of foot rot. And they've been combating it with copper tox and LA200. During worming, they mouthed and bag checked the animals, made sure they were healthy. And this is how they're adding value to these Dorper Katahdin crosses because they're having to deal with foot rot and wormers, vaccinations, and so they're actually solving these problems for you. Well, if you read between the lines, you can kind of tell that maybe these problems that they're having with these sheep breeds is one of the reasons why they're cheaper. And they're not cheaper because they're mixed with Katahdin, because if you look down in this lower right-hand corner, they're selling full-blood Dorper feeder lambs for even less, for just $200 a head. So why are full-blood Dorper lambs going for so low? Why are they not bringing any money? Well, first, I want to make it obvious there's been some sort of change to the commercial sheep market. That it's not always been like this, and that there's some sort of change that commercial producers can see that perhaps the average person can't. And people that are raising sheep for money, not the backyard guy, but a person that's actually trying to make a farm work and trying to get ahead, they can see a trend coming that apparently the rest of us can't see. And so there's a greater demand now for St. Croix over a lot of these other breeds. One of the largest costs for a commercial sheep operation is the use of Anthelmintic or anti-parasitic drugs. Not only the cost of the drugs, but the labor to apply them to the animals. These drugs come in several different trade names, but generally they have the same use. But they can be divided down into basically 3 different types of dewormers. The benzimidazoles, the levamiazoles, and the macrolytic lactones, which contain both ivermectin and moxidectin. And so all the commercial dewormers fall into these categories, and not only are these dewormers expensive, they're all starting to fail. They're starting to not work nearly as well. And this is called Anthelmintic resistance, which means when these dewormers no longer work, because the parasites are building up a resistance to it. And so they did a study on anthelmintic resistance over in Europe, and they found out that about 86% of the benzimiodols were no longer working, the moxidectins about 52%, and the levomyosols about 48%. All of these are failing now. And this article is in Wikipedia under anthelmintic resistance, and it backs it up with a study that's been done in Europe. This little 14 link down at the bottom will take you over to that study. And the study was compiled by agricultural scientists from Europe, and so it's published at the National Library of Medicine, The Increasing Importance of Anthelmintic Resistance in European Livestock. And this paper is not a single study made by just a few people. Rather, it represents a total of 197 publications on anthelmintic resistance with gastrointestinal nematodes. That's what GIN stands for. And they were available for analysis, representing 535 studies in 22 countries and spanning the period of 1980 to 2020. So 40 years of study have gone into this information I'm about to share with you. And no, this study was not done in the United States. It was done in Europe because there's such a strong control over our country by the pharmaceutical industry. There's no way they could have done it in the United States. So here's what they found, that in the 1980s, really just the benzimiodols, this clear bar graph on the left, they had about 20% that didn't work as far as controlling the anthelmintics or the gastrointestinal nematodes, like the barber pole worm. By the 1990s, the benzimiodols were about 60% not working, and the levomyosols were not working. By the 2000s, that along with the macrolytic lactones were not working. And then by the 2010s and 2020s, they're all failing with the moxidectrins holding about 20% that are not working. So where are these sheep dewormers going to fail? Well, they plotted that too, and what they saw by looking at farms in Switzerland, the UK, and other places, is that it looks like it's reaching a factor of 1, where they can't stop these worms at all here in 2020. From what I could tell, by 2030, 2035, most of these sheep dewormers, they're just not going to work anymore because they've got such a resistance to it. So the chemical ag companies are coming up with all these crazy ideas like refugia, where you don't treat your entire flock, you only treat part of it, and somehow that keeps it going longer. I don't understand the logic to that. But worse is they're looking at coming up with these vaccines, some sort of mRNA vaccine for sheep. One would be this Barber vaccine. It has to be used nearly every 6 weeks or nearly continuously to make it work. And so they don't have real immunity. It's just some sort of a generated type of vaccination that makes it last for like only 6 weeks. You're going to vaccinate nearly every sheep 6 times a year. And what they're not going to tell you is, what's this doing to the people on down the line? Like, well, yeah, you got this vaccine in these sheep, but what happens to the people that eat the lamb meat? I don't believe there's any kind of a test on that. If there's any kind of a problem with humans, having these vaccines in humans. So I think that's what we're going to find out later. And so it's very possible that these vaccines really won't work. We've seen a lot of the COVID vaccine has had a lot of problems. So it could be that the sheep industry is starting to see that they're going to have a problem with these gastrointestinal nematodes, or the barber pole worm, that could just wipe out most of what we call the sheep industry today. And the only valuable sheep will be those that are 100% parasite resistant, because if they don't have that and their chemicals don't work, then they're just not going to be a viable option for raising sheep. But beyond that, there's more of a push for organic sheep, organic food, food that's chemical free. And I think you're going to see that with a lot of these. There's going to be a lot more demand in the marketplace. So maybe what we're seeing, the reason that Dorpers are so much cheaper now as compared to St Croix, is that it could be that there's a change in the market going on. And most of us can't see it, but the people who raise sheep for a living, they can. I just want to pass that on. This is in September of 2025, what these prices are, and so we'll see how this develops. Well, thanks for listening to the video.